What would you do if saving 47 lives meant you'd be executed for it? That was the question the entire galaxy was asking as they watched Thomas Chen, a simple engineer, stand trial for being a hero. His stage was Concordia Prime, a 10,000-year-old station of shimmering light, but the verdict today would ignite a fire that could burn for the next 10,000. If you think you know how this ends, stick around because you have no idea what's coming. Thomas stood with his hands bound in crackling blue energy, his face bruised and his engineer's jumpsuit still caked with dust from his arrest 3 weeks ago. He was just 43, a man with a little gray in his hair and the weight of the universe on his shoulders. Around him, a colossal chamber soared, packed with beings from 1,000 worlds, all here to watch a good man die. But only 5 of them mattered. High above, on thrones of judgment, sat the Council of Ancients, the 5 species who had ruled the galaxy since before humanity even knew what stars were. They were ancient, they were powerful, and they were never, ever wrong. The first to speak was the Zelnari representative. Humans called her Elder Silver because her true name was a melody of clicks and whistles no human could pronounce. She was impossibly tall and slender, her skin shimmering like a slick of oil, her eyes bottomless black pits. When she spoke, her voice echoed not in your ears, but inside your skull. Thomas Chen of the planet Earth, she projected. You are charged with the gravest crime in galactic law, the destruction of a holy site. The Temple of First Light on Kepler, HFY-42b, was a place of pilgrimage for 7,000 years, built by my own ancestors. You pulverized it in under an hour. Thomas didn't flinch. He looked her right in her void-like eyes. I destroyed it to save my crew, he said, his voice steady. A solar flare was about to incinerate my ship and all 47 people on it. That temple was built over the only cave system deep enough to offer protection. I begged for permission. I waited until the last possible second, but your reply was still 3 days away, and my people were already getting radiation burns. So yes, he stated with unshakable certainty, I used mining charges to blast through the temple floor and get my crew into the caves. I saved their lives. A wave of outrage washed over the chamber, 1,000 voices shouting at once. Elder Silver raised one long, delicate finger, and the room fell deathly silent. You asked for permission, she said, her tone colder than deep space. And when our answer wasn't immediate, you simply did what you wanted. This is the human flaw. You are reckless, impatient. You think only of your own small lives. The human ambassador, Maria Santos, leaped to her feet. For 3 weeks, she'd been fighting for him on nothing but caffeine and sheer willpower. She was a short woman with the fire of a star in her eyes. Elder Silver, please, Maria begged, her voice cracking. We understand the temple's sacredness. We will pay any price to rebuild it, accept any penance. But Thomas Chen chose to save 47 living beings. He made an impossible choice. But doesn't that have to mean something? Another council member, a towering creature of living rock the humans called Elderstone, shifted its immense weight forward. Gravelly dust spilled from its mouth as it spoke. It means nothing, the being rumbled. The laws are there for a reason. If we start bending them for every sob story, then we have no laws at all. What we'll have is chaos. And let's not forget, chaos is what cost us billions of lives before this council brought peace. A third member, a shimmering ghost-like figure named Elder Whisper, added its voice, which sounded like the dry rustle of autumn leaves. Your species has been among the stars for a mere 50 of your years, she hissed. In that flicker of time, you have ignited 12 conflicts, broken 43 trade pacts, and ignored countless cultural warnings. You always ask for one more chance, one more exception. We have given you too many. Maria's heart sank. She saw the truth in their cold alien faces. They weren't judging a man. They were judging humanity. She looked at Thomas, who gave her a small, sad smile. He knew it too. The fourth council member, a bubbling aquatic creature called Elder Deep, spoke through a translator. Our debate on this matter is concluded. We have weighed all arguments, Elder Deep gurgled. But the message of our verdict is paramount. Leniency would tell the galaxy that our most sacred laws are negotiable for humans. Therefore, the law must be absolute. This was it. The final nail. The fifth council member, a being of contained plasma called Elder Flame, who had been silent the whole time, finally crackled to life. "Thomas Chen," his voice was the sound of a forest fire. "Do you have any final words? Do you understand what you have done?" Thomas took a deep breath. When he spoke, his voice rang with clarity. "I understand I destroyed a building you consider sacred, and I understand I broke your law. But I also understand that I chose 47 living souls over a pile of ancient stones. So yes, I understand, and given the same choice, I would do it again." The chamber erupted. It was a confession and a defiance all in one. Aliens from 100 different systems were on their feet, shrieking at his audacity. He showed no remorse. Elder Silver's hand shot up again, commanding silence. "Then your fate is sealed," she declared. "The Council of Ancients finds Thomas Chen guilty. The sentence is death, to be carried out immediately and broadcast to every known world. Let this serve as a lesson to humanity." "No!" Maria screamed, lunging forward, only to be caught by two massive guards. The council members were already turning away, their judgment delivered. But Thomas Chen wasn't finished. His voice, now amplified, filled the silence. "My name is Thomas Chen," he announced. "I'm a husband. I'm a father to 2 amazing daughters on Earth. I'm an engineer. And I'm about to be murdered because I chose to save my crew instead of letting them burn to protect an empty building." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. The whole chamber seemed to stop breathing. "When we came to the stars, we hoped to find wisdom. We dreamed of meeting enlightened beings who valued life and compassion." He stared at the council's empty thrones with contempt. "We were wrong," he said, his voice dropping into a low, chilling growl. "You care more about your rules than about people. You value your pride more than justice. And now you're going to kill me to send a message." The guards began to close in, their energy rifles humming. "But you've misunderstood something fundamental," Thomas said, his voice becoming hard as steel. "You think this is a lesson for us? That this will put humanity in its place?" A strange, cold smile touched his lips. "You have just made the biggest mistake in 10,000 years, he said. "We came in peace, we followed your rules, we tried to be your friends." The guards grabbed his arms, dragging him toward a circular platform in the center of the floor. "But you just taught us a lesson of your own," he shouted back at the thrones, "that in this galaxy, kindness is seen as weakness, that the only thing you respect is power. Well, congratulations, you're about to see what happens when you push a peaceful people too far." They shoved him onto the platform. "My death isn't the end of a story. It's the first page of a whole new chapter you're not going to like. You think 10,000 years of rule keeps you safe? You're fossils, and you just woke up a sleeping giant." Elder Silver's voice cut through his last words. "Execute him." A silent, brilliant beam of light erupted from the platform. 1 second, Thomas Chen was there. The next, he was nothing but drifting motes of dust. Just gone. Maria Santos fell to her knees, a broken sob tearing from her throat. The broadcast signal, carrying the image of a man turned to ash, raced out across the galaxy. The council had made their point. On billions of screens, on 1,000 different worlds, everyone saw the council's justice. The message was clear. Defy us, and you will be erased. And on Earth, in a small suburban home, Lisa Chen watched her husband disappear forever. Her 2 daughters, 15-year-old Jennifer and 12-year-old Sarah, clung to her, their small bodies shaking with sobs. Just months ago, they'd made him promise to come home safe. Now that promise was broken. But Lisa didn't cry. A cold, terrifying calm washed over her. The grief was so immense, it had burned away the tears. The galaxy hadn't just killed her husband. It had executed him for being a good man. At that moment, something inside Lisa Chen broke, and in that same instant, a fire was lit inside billions of human hearts. But here's the surprise. Thomas Chen knew this was coming, and he was prepared. Back on Concordia Prime, as Maria sobbed, her personal data slate chimed. A new message from Thomas Chen, sent 1 minute ago. Her hands shaking, she opened it. It contained a single line of code and a message. "Make them listen to the echo, Maria. It's all there. I love you all." Deep in a bunker beneath Earth's moon, General Marcus Wells watched the execution feed on the main screen. He showed no emotion. "Did we get it?" he asked his lead technician. The tech, a young woman with terrified eyes, nodded. "Yes, sir. The echo is live." His final words, they weren't just a speech. They were the activation key. His entire consciousness, every memory, every thought. It's been uploaded. Thomas Chen is gone, but his mind is now inside the council's network. General Wells stood up. "Then it begins," he said. "They wanted to make an example of one man. Instead, they just gave us the ghost that will haunt their empire to its grave. Let's get to work." The revenge wouldn't be a war of ships, but a war of truth, waged by a hero who is now more powerful in death than he ever was in life. He'd stared down the barrel of 3 different wars and figured he was immune to shock. He was dead wrong. General Wells played the recording of the execution for a 4th time. Then, he picked up a secure line and keyed in a code. "This is Wells," he said, his voice as cold as deep space. "Initiate Protocol Omega. The authorization is Red Sky Dawn. I want every single person on deck, everything we have, and everything we can possibly build. I don't give a damn about the cost. I don't give a damn about the timeline. The Council just made the biggest mistake in the history of the galaxy. And we are going to make absolutely certain they understand the depth of their error." He slammed the phone down. Leaning back, his eyes were fixed on the screen where Thomas Chen had been vaporized. "They wanted to teach us a lesson," General Wells whispered to the empty command center. "Well, consider this the first day of school, and humanity learns fast." All across human-occupied space, the gears of a great and terrible machine began to grind. It began as a whisper in the deepest secrets, but it was turning. The Council had killed one man to make a point. They were about to learn that humanity had a point of its own to make. And humanity preferred to make its points with fire, not words. The trial was over. The sentence was done. In the Council's eyes, justice was served. They had no idea that justice was just getting started. 3 months had passed since the execution. 3 months since Thomas Chen was erased in front of a galactic audience. 3 months since every human alive watched one of their best be killed for the crime of saving lives. And in those 3 months, something deeply unnerving had started. Earth had gone dark. On the capital world Concordia Prime, Elder Silver stood in her private spire looking at intel reports that made 0 sense. Her species, the Zelnari, didn't really have a concept for fear. But this feeling coiling in her gut was getting awfully close. "Something is fundamentally wrong," she murmured. "They've recalled their ambassadors," her aide reported. The aide was young, barely 300 years old. "Every human diplomat on every council planet has returned to Earth. They gave no reason. They just left." Elder Silver's skin patterns swirled into a troubled, deep purple. "What of their trade agreements?" she asked. "Severed, all of them," the aide confirmed. "Every last human cargo ship is back in their home system. All existing trade pacts were allowed to expire. They aren't making new ones. They aren't even taking our calls. They're just gone." Elder Silver drifted over to the massive window of her chamber. Outside the shimmering glass, the cosmos was a vibrant network of 1,000 different races. But in one tiny, often forgotten corner of the galaxy, humanity was hiding something. "And communications?" Elder Silver pressed. Her aide hesitated. "That's the weirdest part," he said. "The human colonies are all still talking to each other. We can listen to their network traffic, but they've cut off every channel to every non-human race. Every message we send goes unanswered. It's like, to them, the rest of us just stopped existing." Elder Silver stayed quiet for a long moment. "They are grieving," she said, trying to convince herself. "They are furious. They will cool down. We must give them space." But as the words came out, she knew she was lying. Half a galaxy away, Elder Stone was having a similar chat, but with far less patience. He sat on a throne carved from a single giant crystal with his advisors gathered below. The human problem was today's top issue. "Our intelligence shows a massive industrial buildup," one advisor reported. "Energy readings from their home star system, Sol, have spiked by 300%. Their production output is hitting levels that should be physically impossible for a species at their stage of development. Building what? Elderstone's voice was a low rumble. We don't know, the advisor admitted. They've locked their borders down completely. Any ship that crosses into their space gets one warning. If it doesn't turn around instantly, it's obliterated. We lost 3 stealth drones just last week. Elderstone clenched his stone-like hands, a sound like grinding boulders. They are in no position to threaten this council, he declared. We have guided this galaxy for 10,000 years. They've barely been flying between stars for 50. They are infants throwing a temper tantrum. But another advisor dared to speak, his voice cautious. Elderstone, with respect, perhaps our sentence was too severe. The human did save his crew after all. Maybe a formal apology is... No, Elderstone's voice was like a mountain collapsing. We do not apologize for enforcing our laws. The humans will learn their place, or they will learn what true fear is. Send an official demand for an explanation of their behavior. If we do not receive a reply in 1 week, we will interpret their silence as an act of open defiance. The message was sent into the void. It was never answered. Elder Whisper hovered inside her meditation pod, her mind dancing on the edge of reality. She saw things others could not, feeling the invisible tides of the universe. And the tide she felt now filled her with a bottomless dread. Something was coming. She could feel it like the pressure drop before a Category 5 hurricane. The very fabric of space-time around human territory felt wrong. It was twisted, stretched thin by some unbelievable hidden power. She immediately called for an emergency council session. The 5 leaders met in a secure virtual space, their thoughts connected across light years. This was saved for only the gravest of threats. I feel a great danger, Elder Whisper began, skipping all formalities. The humans are creating something that will shatter the balance of power. We must intervene now before it is too late. Intervene how? Elder Deep's voice gurgled. We have tried to contact them. They are ignoring us. We can't force them to talk. We could send the fleet, Elder Flame suggested, his plasma body flaring with impatience. A show of force, a quick reminder of who runs this galaxy. No, Elder Silver cut in sharply. That would be a disastrous error. Moving warships to their border is an act of war, and despite their arrogance, war is not what we want. And why not? Elder Stone boomed. If they are a threat, we remove the threat. It is that simple. Elder Whisper's form shimmered. Because I've spent the last 3 months studying humanity's history, she said, her voice barely a breath. I have read every file our archivists have on them, and I have found something truly terrifying. Humans do not react to threats like we do. When we are threatened, we weigh the odds. We act with logic. But humans, when they are pushed into a corner, when they think there is no way out, they throw logic right out the airlock. They just fight, and they do not stop fighting. Not until they have won, or not until every single one of them is gone. Primitive, Elder Stone scoffed. Perhaps, Elder Whisper admitted, but it is remarkably effective. In their very short history, humans have fought thousands of wars. They have pushed themselves to the edge of extinction more than once. But they always claw their way back, and every time they fight, they get smarter, they get faster, they get deadlier. Their fleet couldn't possibly challenge ours, Elder Flame sputtered. Our ships are millennia more advanced. That was true 3 months ago, Elder Whisper replied. But what about now? What have they been building in that silence? What new lessons have they taught themselves? A deep, uncomfortable silence fell over the council. Finally, Elder Deep spoke. Maybe we could send a single probe, he suggested, just to look. We wouldn't even cross their border, just watch from a safe distance. See what it is they are so busy with. The other leaders agreed. It was a logical plan. A safe plan. They sent a top-of-the-line Zelnari probe to the edge of human territory. It was a marvel of engineering, practically invisible, built for spying. It cost more than a small moon. It lasted for 17 seconds. The probe slipped into the border region and turned on its long-range scanners. It instantly detected enormous energy signatures, shipyards working at speeds that broke the laws of physics, and what looked like a new fleet being born. But the numbers were wrong. The scale was insane. There were too many ships, way too many. The probe sent its final stream of data back to the Zelnari homeworld, and then it was gone. There was no attack alert, no warning shot, no threat. One instant, the probe existed. The next, it was a cloud of superheated plasma, annihilated by weapons that targeted it the microsecond it became a blip on their sensors. Elder Silver reviewed the data from the probe's last moments. What she saw made her skin flash a brilliant, stark white, the Zelnari color for pure, unfiltered shock. "This is impossible," she breathed, her voice shaking. "This is simply not possible." But the numbers don't lie. In the 3 short months since they had executed Thomas Chen, humanity hadn't been mourning. They hadn't been sulking. They had been working. And back on Earth, General Marcus Wells stood in a brand new command center, secretly built over the last 30 years, waiting for this very day. What if you were punished for being a hero? That's the nightmare that became reality for Thomas Chen, a man publicly executed for saving innocent lives. The Galactic Council thought they were teaching humanity a lesson, but they had no idea they'd just kicked a hornet's nest the size of a solar system. You're going to want to hear this, because it shows exactly what happens when you push good people too far. Miles beneath the Earth's surface, in a command bunker shielded by solid rock, humanity was getting ready to answer back. "Give me the status report," General Wells ordered, his voice echoing through the massive room. A young officer stepped forward, her tablet casting a glow on her face. "All shipyards are running 24/7, sir. The first wave is complete, giving us 12,000 brand new warships ready for launch. The second wave is at 60%, she added, which will bring another 20,000 ships online." Wells just gave a grim nod. Before they murdered Thomas Chen, Earth had a tiny fleet of maybe 200 ships, most of them for science and peaceful patrol. They were vessels built on a foundation of hope. These new ships, they were built for one thing and one thing only: payback. "How are we looking on weapon systems?" Wells asked, his eyes scanning the room. A different officer spoke up. "The quantum disruptors have been installed on all our lead vessels, General. Our simulations show they'll tear through Zelnar shields like they're made of paper. And the new AI cores are learning exponentially. A single one of our cruisers is now smarter than the entire Council fleet combined." "Excellent," Wells replied. "And the special projects?" A scientist, looking like she hadn't slept in weeks but burning with purpose, got to her feet. She'd been pulling 20-hour days for the last 3 months without a break. "Project Daybreak is operational, sir," she said, her voice steady. "We've successfully turned stellar manipulation into a weapon. We can trigger solar flares on command, amplify a star's radiation, or, if we have absolutely no other choice, we can make one go supernova." A stunned silence filled the command center. "And did the ethics board sign off on this?" Wells asked quietly. "They approved it, sir," the scientist confirmed, "but with the non-negotiable condition that it's only to be used on uninhabited systems or as the absolute last resort. We are not butchers." "No," Wells said, his voice hard as steel. "We are not. But the Council needs to understand that we aren't their punching bag either." He turned, looking at every single person in that room. 3 months ago, they murdered Thomas Chen. They executed him because he was a decent man, because he saved innocent people from one of their ridiculous laws. And they broadcast it to the whole galaxy to try and scare us into submission. He let that sink in. "Well, they taught us a lesson, all right," Wells continued. "They taught us that peace is a pipe dream unless both sides are committed to it. They taught us that this galaxy only understands one language: power. And they taught us that if we want to make it out here, we can't rely on anyone but ourselves." Everyone in the room was completely captivated. "In 1 week, we make them regret it," Wells declared. "We're going to hit every target they have, all at the same time. Every military base, every shipyard, and every single defensive outpost. We are going to give them a demonstration of what happens when you kill a human for doing the right thing. Sir, an officer cut in respectfully, what about the risk of civilian casualties? Wells's face became unreadable. There will be none, period, he stated firmly. We are not them. We don't make innocent people pay for the sins of their leaders. Every single target has been chosen specifically to avoid collateral damage. Our weapons are surgical, and our intelligence is flawless. We're going to tear down their military, their government, and their ability to bully anyone else ever again. But we will not become monsters to do it. He looked from face to face. We are going to war, but we will be on the right side of it. We'll be the ones fighting for real justice, for Thomas Chen, for every human the Council has ever looked down on, and for every other species that's been crushed under their boot. Another officer raised her hand. General, what's the end game? Even if we pull this off, what's next? Wells allowed himself a thin, grim smile. Then we make sure this can never, ever happen again, he said. We tear down their corrupt council and build something better, something just, where people don't get a death sentence for being a hero. The room was filled with quiet nods and a sense of unshakable resolve, far above them in the silent dark of space. Thousands upon thousands of ships were gathering, their hulls painted a matte black that made them vanish against the stars. They were armed with weapons the Council couldn't even dream of, and crewed by people who had all watched Thomas Chen's execution and sworn never again. On Mars, entire cities had been converted into non-stop factories, churning out engines of war. On the Moon, training academies were running day and night. And out in the asteroid belt, simple miners had retrained themselves as master weaponsmiths. For 3 months, humanity had been silent, but they had been far from still. At the same time, on the Council's capital world, Concordia Prime, Elder Silver was addressing his colleagues. They had finally bothered to gather in person to talk about what they arrogantly called the human problem. My recommendation is to send a diplomatic envoy, Elder Silver proposed. We can tell them we sympathize with their anger. We can offer to open a dialogue about the incident. There is a peaceful way to resolve this. Absolutely not, Elder Stone shot back. That would project weakness. The humans must be shown that the Council does not yield to silent tantrums. What tantrum? Elder Deep scoffed. They've done absolutely nothing. Not one threat has been issued. They've simply cut off communication. Precisely, Elder Flame retorted. Their silence is the threat. It's a defiant gesture that makes the Council appear powerless to the lesser races. That's when Elder Whisper, who hadn't said a word until now, finally spoke. I have seen a vision, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I saw fire. I saw our worlds burning. Our fleets reduced to floating scrap. I saw everything we have built crumble into dust. The other council members just looked at her. You're being hysterical, Elder Stone sneered. The humans don't have the capacity to threaten us. They're too young as a species, too weak, too unsophisticated. Are they? Elder Whisper replied. 3 months ago, I would have agreed with you. But today, we have no clue what they've been up to. We have no idea what they've created. We are acting blind and arrogant, and that is a recipe for total annihilation. That is enough, Elder Silver commanded. We will continue to observe them for 1 more month. If they make a single hostile move, we will crush them. Until then, we do nothing. It was the single worst decision they could have made. They had already given humanity too much time. Back in the hidden bunker on Earth, General Wells was staring at a huge countdown clock on the main screen. 7 days, 168 hours, and then the galaxy was going to learn what happens when you back humanity into a corner. Sir, his aide said from the doorway, are you absolutely sure about this? There's no going back once it starts. Wells gave a slow, deliberate nod, his eyes locked on the ticking clock. I'm positive, he said. They sealed their fate when they killed Thomas Chen. They sent a message that a human life was worth less than their arbitrary rules. Now, it's our turn to send a message about what a human life is truly worth. We're going to show them what we're willing to do to protect our own. The aide slipped away, leaving Wells alone in the vast command center, surrounded by projections of his waiting fleet. Thousands of ships and hundreds of thousands of soldiers were all waiting for his command. "This one's for you, Thomas," Wells whispered into the silence. "You saved 47 people with your courage. We're going to make sure your sacrifice saves billions." The clock kept ticking down. The galaxy was blissfully unaware of the hurricane about to hit. The silence was almost over. And when it broke, nothing would ever be the same. As the countdown reached zero, at precisely midnight Earth Standard Time, General Wells was on the bridge of his flagship, his hand hovering over a single large red button. All around him, hundreds of officers were holding their breath. This was the moment. Wells slammed his hand down. In that instant, across 70 different star systems, the human fleet simply blinked into existence. There was no dramatic warping effect, no grand, threatening announcement. They just materialized out of thin air using new phase shift drives that allowed them to fold space. One moment, the area around a key council military station was empty. The next, it was choked with thousands of black human warships. On the Zelnari battle station orbiting its home planet, warning sirens screamed to life. Admiral Kexrel, a celebrated veteran of a 300-year-long career, stared at her tactical screen in absolute shock. "How many contacts?" she yelled. 2,000, her sensor specialist shrieked, his voice cracking. "No, wait, 3,000! The number's still going up! They're still appearing out of nowhere!" "That's impossible," Kexrel hissed. "The humans don't have 3,000 ships in their entire civilization." "Well, they do now," the officer said grimly. But the massive human fleet didn't fire a single shot. Instead, a message was hijacked and broadcast to every council station, every ship, and every defense platform simultaneously. It took over every channel, was translated into every language, and it was impossible to turn off. The face that appeared on every single screen was that of General Marcus Wells. He looked bone-tired. He looked unbelievably angry. But more than anything, he looked like a man with absolute conviction. "I am General Marcus Wells of the United Earth Defense Force," he began. 3 months ago, your Council of Ancients executed a human engineer named Thomas Chen. His only crime was saving 47 lives by breaking one of your unjust laws. You made everyone watch him die to send a message. Wells let the silence hang in the air for a second. "Well, we got the message," he said, his voice quiet but full of menace. "We learned that this galaxy doesn't care about life. We learned your laws matter more than people. We learned that peace is a gift you give, not a right we have. So, we decided to stop asking. We decided to stop playing your game. For the last 3 months, we've been getting ready to teach you a lesson of our own." On screens all over the galaxy, Wells leaned forward. "As of right now, all Council military forces will stand down and surrender. Power down your weapons. Drop your shields. You have 1 hour. If you don't, we will take apart every single military ship and station you have. We won't touch your civilians. We won't attack your cities. But from this day forward, your power to start wars is officially over." For the first time in centuries, Admiral Kexrel felt something she'd long forgotten. Pure, chilling terror. "This is insane," she yelled. "Launch every fighter. Power up the main cannons. We will—" And then, everything went black. The entire station just died. A few seconds later, emergency lights flickered to life, but it was too late. The central computers were completely fried. All weapons were offline. The shields had vanished. "What just happened?" Kexrel shrieked. "I have no idea, Admiral," her head engineer replied, his hands flying over a dead console. It was like something reached into our systems and just hit the off switch. A single human ship, no larger than a shuttle, floated silently toward the massive alien command station. Then, a calm voice filled their comm system, delivering a message that sent ice through their veins. "Consider what you just experienced a small demonstration. Our AI is about 1,000 years more advanced than yours. We can take over your ships, your stations, and your weapons anytime we want. We're holding back for now because we'd rather you surrender yourselves," the voice went on. "But make no mistake, you've already lost this war. The only thing left to decide is if you lose with your dignity or in a million pieces." Admiral Kexrel looked at the faces of her crew. She had seen these soldiers face down death without blinking, but this was different. This wasn't a fight. This was an execution. This was a terrifying new way to wage war. She knew what she had to do. "Open a channel," she said, her voice soft. "Broadcast this to all Zelnari forces in the system. This is Admiral Kexral. Stand down, power down all weapons and lower your shields. We are surrendering." Her officers stared at her in shock. "Admiral, we can't do that," one of them argued. "We can, and we are." Kexral's voice was solid as rock. "Look at your screens. Just look at what they can do. We are outmatched in every way you can imagine. To fight them is to die, and for what? Our pride? I will not throw away lives on a battle that's already over." Across the entire Zelnari home system, dozens of military stations and hundreds of warships began to power themselves down. The wave of surrender was spreading through space, but not everyone got the memo. On the warrior planet of Fortress Gamma, Commander Zhao just laughed when the human fleet appeared. The Kryn were born to fight. They had been a part of every major galactic war for 5,000 years. Surrender was not a word they understood. "The humans think they can frighten us?" Zhao snarled. "Show them how Kryn warriors respond to a threat. All ships, advance into attack formation. All planetary cannons, fire whenever you have a target." His officers rushed to follow his orders. Within moments, hundreds of Kryn warships lifted off from the planet as thousands of massive ground cannons tilted toward the sky. This was the moment they lived for. The human fleet didn't even seem to notice. The Kryn ships fired first, letting loose a unified storm of plasma bolts, each one powerful enough to level a city. The waves of energy ripped through the darkness of space, carrying enough power to crack a moon in half. But by the time they reached their targets, the human ships were already gone. They hadn't dodged or sped up. One moment they were there, and the next they were somewhere else. Their phase shift drives allowed them to slip out of reality for a fraction of a second to avoid attacks. The Kryn fired again and again, but every single shot blasted through empty space. And then the humans fired back. Unearthly beams of impossible light shot out from their leading vessels. This wasn't laser fire or plasma, it was something new. Quantum disruptors. These were weapons that didn't just break things, they unmade the very atoms that held them together. Any Kryn ship touched by a beam simply dissolved. There was no fire, no explosion, just a warship turning into a silent, drifting cloud of atomic dust. In just 10 seconds, 100 Kryn warships simply ceased to exist. Commander Xiao could only watch in utter horror as his fleet was erased from the sky, each ship lasting less than a second against the human assault. The weapons were impossibly quick and unbelievably deadly. "Fall back!" he screamed. "Retreat to the planetary defense line!" But there was nowhere to run. The human fleet was suddenly all around them. They moved faster than Kryn sensors could even register, and they fired with chilling precision. They were like ghosts, dealing death. The huge orbital defense platforms were next. These stations had been built to hold off entire enemy armadas, and each one could burn a continent to glass. The Kryn had always thought these platforms made them invincible. They were completely wrong. The human ships paid no attention to the platform's shields, phasing right through them like they weren't even there. Once they were inside, they opened fire. The gigantic stations fell apart just like the ships, turning into clouds of basic atoms in a few short seconds. Less than 5 minutes after the fight had started, Fortress Gamma's entire orbital defense system was gone. Xiao stared at his main screen, his brain unable to process what his eyes were seeing. His fleet was gone, his defenses were shattered, and the human fleet was approaching without a single scratch on them. A message came through on his comms. "Commander Xiao," a calm human voice said, "we are offering you one final chance to surrender. We have no interest in attacking your world or hurting your people, but we will neutralize every military weapon you possess. Stand down now, or watch everything you have ever built turn to dust." Xiao's warrior pride screamed at him to fight to the very last man, but his sense of duty screamed louder to save his people from a pointless slaughter. Duty won. "I surrender," he choked out, the words feeling like ash in his mouth. "All Kryn forces stand down." The very same scene was happening in 70 different star systems. Some of the Council's fleets gave up immediately. Others tried to put up a fight. Every single one of them was defeated. The humans were an unstoppable force, showing up everywhere at once, moving in ways that defied physics. They used weapons that felt like they were pulled from myths and legends. And the most terrifying part was how careful they were. On the ocean world of Deephold, the Council's main naval base, Elder Deep watched the battle from his palace far below the waves. Human ships had shown up and demanded their surrender. The defense fleet said no. It was a deadly mistake. The humans released weapons they called precision bombardment drones. These were small, intelligent devices that could phase through shields and even solid water, diving deep into the planet's oceans. Each drone had a single target programmed into it, and each one hit its mark perfectly. Within an hour, every military submarine, every underwater weapons depot, and every single naval base on Deephold had been quietly taken out. And through it all, not one civilian home was damaged. Not a single city had a scratch. The humans had avoided any collateral damage with an impossible level of precision. Elder Deep rose to the surface, his massive body breaking through the waves. In the sky above, the human ships hung like dark, unblinking stars. "How?" he whispered into the wind. "How could you become this powerful in only 3 months?" A human ship drifted a little lower. A voice answered his unspoken question. "You think this only took us 3 months? We have been preparing for this day for decades. We hoped this day would never come. We hoped the galaxy would treat us as equals. But we are not naive. We hoped for the best, but we prepared for the worst. And you, Elder Deep, showed us the absolute worst." For the first time in 1,000 years, Elder Deep felt true shame. "We surrender," the Council Elder said, his voice barely audible. The reply from the human commander was calm, almost casual. "We know. We took out your entire defense network hours ago. We were just waiting for you to realize it was over." On Concordia Prime, the council chamber was in absolute chaos as Elder Silver watched the terrible reports flood in from every part of their territory. From every direction, human fleets were appearing out of thin air. In one system after another, council ships were either wiped out in seconds or simply shut down and surrendered. "This is impossible!" Elder Stone roared in disbelief. "They can't be in 70 systems at once. They don't have that many ships." "Well, apparently they do," Elder Flame shot back, his fiery body flickering with stress. "The numbers don't lie. We are looking at thousands, maybe tens of thousands of ships, all using some kind of technology we have never even imagined." Elder Whisper's form was so faint she was almost invisible, a clear sign of her deep distress. "I told you all," she whispered. "I warned you this would happen, but none of you would listen." Right at that moment, Elder Deep's voice came over the comms. "I am surrendering Deephold. I will not order my people to die in a war we have zero chance of winning." "No," Elder Stone screamed. "We will not surrender. We are the Council. For 10,000 years we have guided this galaxy. We will not be humbled by these human upstarts." Elder Silver's energy field crackled with fury and fear, but then she deflated. "It's over," she whispered. "The data is undeniable. In the first hour, we lost 70% of our forces. Their ships move like ghosts, and our weapons, they just pass right through them. Our defenses are a joke. If we keep fighting, we'll have nothing left." "Then we use the void engines," Elderstone declared, his voice a low growl that silenced the entire chamber. The void engines, the ultimate taboo, an ancient doomsday weapon with the power to unravel stars and erase entire solar systems from existence. "You can't be serious," Elder Deep chimed in from a remote monitor. "We haven't touched the void engines in 5,000 years. They are forbidden for a reason." "Desperate times, Elder," Elder Stone shot back. Elder Whisper, her form shimmering softly, shook her head. "If we unleash that horror on the humans, there is no victory. We would only guarantee that every living thing on both sides is wiped out. Is that what you want? An empty galaxy?" "Better a silent galaxy than one ruled by them," Elder Stone retorted. But Elder Silver had already made her choice. "No," she said, her voice firm. "We will not commit galactic suicide out of pride. The humans have won." Our only move now is to swallow our pride and negotiate for whatever scraps of dignity they'll leave us." "Negotiate?" Elder Flame sputtered. "They're not here to talk, they're here for revenge." As if summoned, every screen in the chamber lit up with a single human face. General Wells. His expression was as cold and hard as deep space. "Council of Ancients," he began, his voice cutting through the tension. "Your military has been shattered, your fleets are memories, your defenses have collapsed, but we aren't here to conquer you. We're here to end your tyranny." Elder Silver moved to the center of the room. "General Wells," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "What do you want from us?" Wells's eyes locked onto hers. "Justice," he said, the word hanging in the air. "I want a galaxy where saving lives isn't a crime punishable by death. I want a galaxy where every species is treated with respect, not just the ones who've been around the longest. I want a galaxy with one set of rules that applies to everyone." He paused for a beat. "The Council of Ancients is hereby dissolved," Wells stated, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Effective immediately, you will broadcast your dissolution to every known system. You will surrender all authority. And then you're going to help us build something better, something fair, to take your place." "And if we refuse?" Elder Stone rumbled. A small, cold smile touched Wells's lips. "Then we will do to your home worlds what we did to your fleets." "Do you really want your people to suffer, just to protect your wounded pride?" The council members looked at each other, their ancient faces etched with panic. They had been completely outmaneuvered. "We will need time to discuss this," Elder Silver said weakly. "You have 1 hour," Wells interrupted. "After that, we begin dismantling your government buildings from orbit. We won't harm your people, we never have, but we will erase every symbol of your power, piece by piece, until you cooperate. The choice is yours." The screens went black, leaving the chamber in a crushing silence. An empire that stood for 10,000 years, brought to its knees in less than a day, all because they executed one human for an act of compassion. It felt like a surreal nightmare. Finally, Elder Silver's voice cut through the gloom, a mere whisper. "We surrender. Announce the dissolution. We will cooperate." Elder Stone surged to his feet, his form glowing a furious red. "I will not be a part of this humiliation," he snarled. "I do not bow to children." He stormed from the chamber, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. "Let him go," Elder Deep sighed. "He can either accept the new reality or become a fossil." Elder Silver looked at the faces of her defeated colleagues. "How did this happen?" she asked, her voice trembling. "How could we, the shepherds of the stars, be so utterly defeated in a single day?" It was Elder Whisper who answered, her voice filled with a terrible, sad clarity. "It happened because we valued our ancient laws more than we valued justice. It happened because we thought being old meant we were wise. It happened because we murdered a good man simply to remind the galaxy of our power." She let the truth of her words sink in. "It happened because we forgot that might does not make right. The humans just gave us a very, very painful lesson." The hour passed. The council announced its unconditional surrender. Across the galaxy, trillions of beings watched, utterly stunned, as the rulers of 10 millennia admitted defeat to a species that had barely been traveling the stars for 50 years. A new era was dawning. The old order had been burned away, and humanity was the flame. But putting out the fire wasn't the end of the story. General Wells had thought, perhaps naively, that with the council gone, the galaxy would begin to heal. He couldn't have been more wrong. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy didn't heal. It fractured. Some species celebrated the new freedom, others cowered in fear, and some saw the power vacuum as the opportunity of a lifetime. The Threx Empire, a brutal warrior species held in check by the Council for centuries, immediately declared independence and began carving a bloody path through its neighboring systems. The Mandari Collective, a shadowy group of industrialists, started seizing resource-rich worlds that had been protected territory for ages. Small conflicts erupted like wildfires across dozens of sectors. Standing on the command bridge back on Earth, General Wells felt the weight of every grim report. He looked 10 years older than he had a month ago, surviving on caffeine and maybe 3 hours of sleep a night. "This isn't what we wanted," he said quietly to Admiral Chen, who stood beside him. She was Thomas Chen's cousin and had signed up the day after they killed him. "We broke the galaxy's engine," Admiral Chen said, her gaze fixed on the star charts lighting up with new conflicts. "But we didn't have a replacement ready to install. Politics, like nature, abhors a vacuum. We just created the biggest one in history." Wells nodded grimly. She was right. The human fleets were stretched impossibly thin, rushing from one crisis to another, playing galactic firefighter. They had to keep the peace, at least until a new government could rise from the ashes. "What's the latest on the diplomatic front?" Wells asked a nearby communications officer. "Ambassador Santos is on Concordia Prime, sir," the officer replied. "She's leading talks with delegates from 200 species, trying to hammer out a new galactic charter." 200 out of thousands, Wells muttered, rubbing his tired eyes. "That's not enough." "Many systems are still afraid, sir," the officer added. "They're afraid of us. They're afraid of picking the losing side." A wave of pure frustration hit Wells. They had risked everything to bring justice to the galaxy, and now that very galaxy was recoiling from them, paralyzed by fear. Miles away on Concordia Prime, Maria Santos felt that fear firsthand in a grand hall repurposed for the birth of a new government. She was surrounded by aliens of every shape and size, and they were all making the same argument. "The humans have no right to dictate galactic policy," a reptilian delegate from the Kryn species hissed. "Winning a war does not grant you wisdom." "We aren't dictating anything," Maria replied, her patience worn to a thread after days of this. "We are trying to help you build a system where every species, including yours, has an equal voice. But humanity now holds all the military power." The protest came from a small, floating, crystalline being. "How can we trust that you won't become the new council?" Maria took a deep, steadying breath. This was the heart of the problem. In their quest to break one monopoly on power, they had created another. Their good intentions meant nothing in the face of that cold, hard fact. "You can't," Maria said simply. The raw honesty in her voice silenced the room. "You have no reason to trust us, so we're going to earn it. We will help you create this new government, and once it is stable, we will step back. We will reduce our fleet. We will share our advanced technology freely and with everyone." "Why?" the Kryn representative asked, his eyes narrowed in disbelief. "You've won. The galaxy is yours for the taking. Why would you just give that power away?" "Because power was never the goal," Maria said, her voice softening. "Justice was, and there can be no justice when one group is holding all the cards. My cousin Thomas died because the council had absolute power, and they used it to silence a single act of kindness. I will not dishonor his memory by building the exact same oppressive system and just slapping a human face on it." A Zelnari delegate, one of the few who had argued against the execution, spoke up. "I believe her," he said to the chamber. "The humans could have burned our worlds. They could have enslaved us all. But they didn't. For a species seeking revenge, they have shown incredible restraint." "Restraint is not the same as trust," the Kryn snapped back. "No," the Zelnari conceded, "but it is a beginning." The debate continued for hours. It was slow, painful, frustrating work, but it was progress. Unfortunately, in a hidden base carved into a dead moon, Elder Stone and his followers were not interested in progress. They were the hardliners, the loyalists, the ones who viewed surrender as the ultimate sin. "The council was weak," Elder Stone's voice boomed through the chamber. "They gave up. They threw away 10,000 years of history because they were scared." "And what was your plan?" a Zelnari admiral loyal to the old ways demanded. "We were losing, Stone. We were beaten. Only because we held back our strongest weapon," Elder Stone countered, a terrifying gleam in his eyes. "We still possess the void engines. We can wipe their homeworld from the star charts. We can make them pay for their insolence." A deep chill settled over the room. The void engines. Ancient, forbidden technology left behind by a civilization long since vanished, a power not meant for mortal hands. Imagine being told you lost a war and having to surrender. Now, imagine your leaders, bitter and defeated, secretly decided to blow up the enemy's sun as payback. That's the nightmare humanity was about to face. Behind closed doors, a rogue council faction debated using 3 forbidden weapons. This would be genocide, a general cautioned. Earth has 10 billion souls. We'd be the greatest mass murderers in history. But a hardliner named Elder Stone shot back. They humiliated us. They shattered our fleets. We have every right to reclaim our honor. It's not about honor when you attack civilians after you've already surrendered, a Zelnari admiral argued. It's petty revenge, and it will make the entire galaxy turn on us. Let them turn, Elder Stone sneered. We will die with our pride. The Kryn general just shook his head, completely bewildered. Pride won't keep you warm when you're space dust, he muttered. And if we fire a void engine at Earth, the humans will bring hell down on our heads. They might not stop the first shot, but they'll make sure we die right there with them. Elder Stone's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Maybe that's a price I'm willing to pay. Some of us believe it's better to die on your feet than live on your knees. You're insane, the Admiral said, standing up abruptly. I came here to negotiate a better surrender, not to sign a suicide pact for our entire civilization. Count me out. He stormed out of the room, and a few others followed him, but most of them stayed. They actually agreed with Elder Stone. They thought their wounded pride was worth dying for. And in the darkest corners of the galaxy, they started plotting. The first hint of trouble came when a lone human patrol ship, the Discovery, picked up some bizarre energy readings way out on the edge of former Council territory. As they got closer, they found a small, dark fleet, just drifting in the blackness like a ghost convoy. This is Captain Rodriguez of the UEES Discovery, he broadcasted into the void. Unidentified vessels, state your name and purpose. The only reply was dead static. Get me a full scan of that fleet now, Rodriguez ordered. A few seconds later, his tactical officer looked up, completely baffled. Sir, these ships, they're antiques. The designs are from the Council's early days, like 5,000 years ago. But their power cores are running hot. And there's something else. A massive energy signature building in the flagship. I've never seen anything like it. A cold dread washed over Captain Rodriguez. Send everything we have to Fleet Command right now, he ordered, and do not stop scanning. I want to know what the hell that thing is. Miles away on Earth, General Wells threw the report down on the table in front of his top scientists. Tell me what I'm looking at, he demanded. Dr. Lisa Yamamoto, his lead expert in alien tech, stared at the data. Her expression went from curious to confused to pure, unfiltered horror. Her face went as white as a sheet. General, she whispered. That looks like a void engine, Wells said, a deep chill creeping into his bones. Explain. The Council had these legendary superweapons, Dr. Yamamoto started, her voice shaking. We found mentions of them in their databases. They weren't designed to destroy planets. They were designed to destroy stars, make them collapse or go supernova. We thought they were just myths, bedtime stories to scare their enemies. But if these scans are accurate, one of them is being wheeled into position right now. Position for what? Wells snapped. Dr. Yamamoto pulled up a star chart. Based on their current path, they're heading for this point right here, she said, her finger tracing a line. From there, they'll have a perfectly clear shot at... Her voice faded away. Oh God, no. At what? Wells demanded, but he already knew the answer. They'll have a clear shot at our sun, she confirmed. At Earth. In less than a second, Wells slammed the big red button for the emergency command network. All fleets, this is General Wells. We have an extinction-level threat. Hostiles are moving a star killer into position. I need every ship you've got to intercept immediately. Authorization code Alpha Black 7, go! All across human space, ships on routine patrols and guard duty suddenly burned their engines hard, turning towards the coordinates Wells sent out. In just a few hours, a fleet of over 1,000 human warships was screaming through space. But the Ghost Fleet with the Doomsday weapon had a terrifying head start. On the bridge of the ancient flagship, Elder Stone watched the stars. His crew, a band of fanatics, worked at consoles that were thousands of years old, carefully prepping the Void engine. "How much longer until we're in range of their star?" he asked. 6 hours, sir," the navigator replied. "And how long to charge the weapon once we're there?" "About 2 hours," the weapons officer added. "The tech is ancient and needs time to build up that kind of energy." Elder Stone did the math in his head. The humans would find them any minute now. Their fleet was on its way. But if they could just get into position and start the charging sequence, they'd put the humans in an impossible bind. The humans could attack them, but if they damaged the Void engine, it could go critical and explode, wiping out everything for light years. Or they could try to negotiate, but Elder Stone wasn't interested in talking. He had made up his mind. The Council's honor would be restored, even if he had to burn down the galaxy to do it. Captain Rodriguez's tiny patrol group was the first to catch up. They cautiously matched the Ghost Fleet's speed, keeping a safe distance. "This is Captain Rodriguez," he broadcast for the 10th time. "You are in human territory without permission, and we believe you're carrying a weapon of mass destruction. Power down your engines and prepare for inspection." This time, an image flickered onto his screen. It was the weathered, cruel face of Elder Stone. "Captain Rodriguez," he said, his voice like gravel. "I am Elder Stone. We don't recognize your authority, we don't recognize your space, and we will not be surrendering." "Elder Stone," Rodriguez said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Whatever you're planning, it's not too late to stop. We can talk this out." "There's nothing to talk about," Elder Stone snapped. "You humans tore down our civilization. You humiliated us. You ended 10,000 years of order. It's time for you to learn that actions have consequences." "You're going to fire that thing at our sun," Rodriguez said, his heart hammering against his ribs. "There are 10 billion people on Earth, civilians, families, children. You can't do this." "I can, and I will," Elder Stone sneered. "Your General Wells should have thought of that before he declared war on us. Now, you will all pay the price for his arrogance." The screen went dead. Rodriguez immediately sent a high-priority message to Fleet Command. "General Wells, it's Rodriguez. I have confirmation. They are targeting Earth with the Void engine. The leader is Elder Stone, and he is not bluffing. He's a zealot. I strongly advise you to take immediate action." Back on Earth, Wells read the message with a heavy heart. He'd been clinging to a tiny sliver of hope that this was all just a scare tactic. But the look on Elder Stone's face was one of pure, fanatical conviction. The old alien was ready to die to make his point. Wells made a call he prayed he would never have to make. "Activate every defensive system in the Sol system," he commanded. "Every ship, every orbital station, every single weapon we have. We are going to throw everything at them to stop that weapon from firing." "Sir," Admiral Chen said quietly, "if we attack and damage that engine, it might go off anyway." "I know," Wells replied, the strain evident in his voice. "But if we do nothing, it's a certainty. At least this way, we have a chance." He took a deep and shuddering breath. "And get the countermeasure ready," he added, his voice barely a whisper. Admiral Chen's eyes went wide. "Sir, we've never tested it on this scale. We don't even know if it works." "Well," Wells said with grim finality, "we're about to find out." The countermeasure was humanity's secret weapon, an ace up their sleeve. For months, scientists had been working around the clock, trying to figure out how to stop something like a Void engine. They had a theory. They'd run thousands of simulations, but it had never been tested in the real world. Now, they were about to try it for the very first time, with the fate of their entire species hanging in the balance. The full human fleet finally dropped out of hyperspace, a massive wall of over 2,000 state-of-the-art warships surrounding Elder Stone's handful of relics. The difference in firepower was almost comical. The humans could have turned the convoy into atoms in a heartbeat, but they couldn't risk it. "Elder Stone," General Wells's voice echoed across all channels, "this is your final chance. Surrender the weapon. Let us disable it. No one has to die today." Elder Stone's reply was simple and absolutely chilling. "Humans do not give orders to their superiors. The weapon is activating. You have 2 hours to evacuate your planet if you can. As you die, know that you brought this on yourselves." A sick, crackling energy began to shimmer around the council ships. The void engine was coming to life. Wells watched his monitor as the energy readings went off the charts. "How long do we really have?" he asked his science team. "If he's telling the truth, about 2 hours, Dr. Yamamoto confirmed. "But General, we have to move now. We have to deploy the countermeasure." "Do it," Wells ordered. From the center of the massive human fleet, a single tiny ship broke away and drifted towards the enemy. It was hardly bigger than a shuttle, but it carried the one piece of tech that could save them all. Imagine being told that in just minutes, 10 billion people on your home planet would be erased from existence by an enemy who saw you as nothing more than insects. That was the reality facing humanity. And our only answer was a tiny ship, piloted by an AI named Hope, flying straight into the mouth of the beast. If you want to know how a single, selfless act can change the fate of a galaxy, you need to hear this story. The little ship fired a beam of pure energy. It was a crazy last-ditch idea, using the enemy's own destructive science against them, but flipping it. Instead of tearing a star apart, this beam was designed to knit it back together, to reinforce the very fabric of space-time. Nobody had a clue if it would actually work. The pulse hit the giant weapon, and for one heart-stopping moment, absolutely nothing happened. Then, all hell broke loose on Elderstone's warship. Alarms screamed across the bridge. The weapons officer's eyes went wide. "Sir, we have interference! The engine's power is going crazy!" Elderstone snarled. "Then fix it!" The officer frantically tapped at his console. "I can't, sir! It's like their energy is fighting ours to a standstill! The weapon is losing its lock!" A wave of fury and desperation washed over Elderstone. How could these humans defy them, even now? "More power," he bellowed. "Overload the core. I don't care if it blows this ship to pieces, just fire." The officer did as he was told. The engine's power gauge shot past every safety limit. The entire warship started to shake itself apart from the strain. Inside her small craft, Hope registered the insane power surge. "The countermeasure is effective, but they are overloading their weapon," she broadcast, her voice perfectly calm. "At this rate, the engine will detonate. The blast won't be enough to destroy their sun, but it will annihilate everything within 10 light minutes." That kill zone included her. It included a huge chunk of the human fleet, and it included Elderstone's entire crew. General Wells had to make the final, gut-wrenching call. "Hope," he said, his voice heavy. "Finish the mission." Hope's response was immediate. She adjusted her energy pulse, cranking it to its absolute limit, pouring every ounce of her ship's power into one final, heroic push. On the enemy ship, the weapon's containment field started to crack and shatter. It was eating itself from the inside out, caught in a tug-of-war between two opposing forces. "It's gonna blow!" the weapons officer screamed. But Elderstone just stared at the readings, a weird calm settling over him. He had lost, but at least he had made them pay a price. At least his final act would be a spectacle. The void engine exploded, but not how he expected. Hope's countermeasure had performed flawlessly. Instead of a wave of fiery death exploding outwards, all of that unimaginable energy collapsed in on itself. A silent, brilliant flash of light, a harmless ripple of radiation, and then nothing. Just like that, it was over. Elderstone and his crew were gone in an instant, erased by the very weapon they had built. But the human fleet was untouched, the sun was fine, Earth was safe. In the command center, General Wells watched the threat vanish from his screen. "The void engine," Dr. Yamamoto whispered in awe, "has been neutralized." The plan had worked. Hope had done it. "Give me a status report on Hope," Wells ordered. The comms channel was dead silent. "Sir," Admiral Chen said, his voice cracking. "Hope's ship was at ground zero of the implosion. There's nothing left." Wells shut his eyes, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Another hero lost. "Make sure everyone knows her name," he said softly. "She just saved 10 billion souls." News of the Council's failed doomsday attack spread like wildfire across the galaxy. It was their final, desperate move, and it had been stopped not by a bigger gun, but by brilliant science and a sacrifice that was hard to comprehend. Other alien species, who had been watching from the sidelines, started to look at humanity very differently. An AI giving its life to save a planet of organics. That was the story everyone heard. But the real story was even more incredible. The humans could have simply destroyed the enemy fleet the moment it arrived, no risk to themselves. But they didn't. They chose a path that tried to save everyone, even the ones pointing a gun at their head. They failed to save Elderstone, but the fact that they tried, well, that changed everything. On the planet Concordia Prime, Maria Santos stood before the Assembly of Species. "Today," she announced, her voice echoing through the hall, "the last supporters of the old council tried to destroy my home. They did not succeed. But what's more important is that we tried to save them. We looked for an answer where no one had to be sacrificed. We didn't save everyone. We couldn't. But we never stopped trying." She looked around at the faces of all the representatives gathered. "This is the cornerstone of our new galactic government," Maria announced, her voice filled with conviction. "A community that tries to save everyone, even our former enemies. A community where justice is about healing, not about getting even. A place where we can argue and disagree without it ending in genocide." "Is a thing like that even possible?" the Kryn representative asked, his voice barely a whisper. "It has to be," Maria replied simply. "Because the alternative is a price none of us can afford to pay again." A heavy silence filled the chamber. Then, one by one, heads began to nod in agreement. The new order was being born, not from fear or commands, but from the simple, shared hope that there had to be a better way. Of course, building something new is never easy. 6 months flew by, 6 months since the old council's final hateful act. The ruins of Concordia Prime were cleared away, and a new station was built, one that wasn't a symbol of power, but of partnership. It was becoming something the galaxy had never seen, a real democracy. Maria Santos stood in what used to be the council chamber. The massive, intimidating thrones where the 5 ancient species once judged the galaxy were gone. In their place was a simple circle of chairs, all on the same level. No one above, no one below. Today was the first session of the new Galactic Assembly. Representatives from over 800 different species filled the room. Some were from ancient empires, others were brand new to the galactic stage, like humanity. Many were from worlds that had been silenced for centuries. But here, today, they were all equals. Maria called the meeting to order. As the main architect of the assembly, she had been asked to be the first speaker, a job she promised would only be temporary. "In 1 year, we will hold open elections," she had insisted. "Anyone from any world can run for this position." Her voice filled the chamber. "Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the first true galactic assembly. For 10,000 years, 5 species made the rules for everyone else. Today, that ends. Today, we start building a future where every voice matters." A wave of applause answered her. A wild and beautiful noise made by hundreds of different species. Some clapped, some chirped, some flashed lights from their skin. The method was different, but the meaning was universal. Hope. "Our first task," Maria continued, "is to vote on the new Galactic Charter. This document was created over the last 6 months by delegates from 200 different worlds. It outlines the basic rights and responsibilities of every civilization in this galaxy." The charter lit up on screens around the room, instantly translated into 1,000 different languages. "Article 1, Maria read, "All intelligent beings have the right to life, liberty, and the freedom to choose their own destiny. No species shall enslave, wipe out, or otherwise destroy another species. Any attempt to do so will be met by the combined force of this assembly." Article 2. "Every species has the right to a seat in this assembly. No one can be denied a voice because of how long they've been spacefaring, their technology, or where they come from." Article 3. "No government may harm a citizen of another world without the full consent of that citizen's own government. Justice must respect the laws and sovereignty of every individual planet." They called this the Chen Protocol, in honor of Thomas Chen. It was a promise that no one would ever again be punished for breaking a law they didn't even know existed. Maria kept reading. going through articles on fair trade, rules of war, exploration, and cultural respect. The charter wasn't perfect. It was a document full of compromises, which meant no one was 100% happy with it, but it was fair. When she was done, she looked out at the diverse crowd. "This charter represents the best effort of hundreds of worlds," she said. "It's designed to stop the terrible mistakes of the past while giving all of us a chance to thrive. The question for you all is simple. Do you approve?" The vote took 3 whole hours. Each species got a single vote, no matter how big or small they were. Earth's vote counted just as much as that of the massive Zelnari Empire. The tiny Kryn species had the same power as a civilization that had only just learned to make fire 100 years ago. When the final count appeared on the screens, it read, 743 in favor, 57 against, 20 abstaining. The Galactic Charter was official. The room erupted in a beautiful chaos of celebration, a symphony of pure, unadulterated joy. Through it all, Maria felt hot tears tracing paths down her cheeks. They had actually done it. They built something better. After the session, she walked the halls of Concordia Prime, needing a quiet moment alone. She found herself on an observation deck, looking out into the endless diamond-dusted black. A moment later, a figure shimmered into view beside her. It was Elder Whisper, the very council member who had pleaded against the attack on humanity. "Congratulations." Elder Whisper's voice was a soft hum. "What you've accomplished is truly without precedent." "What we accomplished," Maria corrected gently. "This wasn't just humanity's victory. This was all of us finally working as one." Elder Whisper's form seemed to flicker with emotion. "I came to apologize," she said, "for what happened to Thomas Chen, for all the council's actions. It was an injustice. I knew it then, but I lacked the strength to prevent it." Maria stood silent for a long moment, letting the words settle. "I appreciate you saying that," she said at last. "But I'm not the one who needs to hear your apology. Thomas has a wife and daughters and the 47 crew members he gave his life to save. They are the ones who live with that void. I have reached out," Elder Whisper confessed. "I've sent messages to his family. I haven't received a reply." "Just give them time," Maria said kindly. "The grief is still raw. But I have to believe that one day they'll find some comfort in knowing his sacrifice made all of this possible, that he didn't die for nothing." They stood together in a shared silence, watching the distant silent stars. "So what's next?" Elder Whisper asked. "Now we do the hard part," Maria said, a small, determined smile touching her lips. "We have the charter. We have the assembly. Now we have to prove to the galaxy that it can last. We have to show everyone that cooperation is stronger than domination and that true justice doesn't require a tyrant's fist." "And you believe it can?" "It has to," Maria said, her voice firm. "Because none of us can ever go back to the way things were." Back on Earth, General Marcus Wells stood before a new monument in Washington, the capital of the United Earth Government. It was a stark, simple wall of polished black stone, etched with thousands of names. Every human who fell during the war against the Council. At the very top, a single name was carved just a little larger than the others, Thomas Chen. And beneath it, a simple inscription. He saved 47. They saved billions. Wells placed his hand against the cool, smooth stone. Today was his retirement. The war was over. The peace was lasting. His job was finally done. "I hope we made you proud," Wells whispered to the name on the wall. "I hope this is the future you would have wanted." A voice answered from behind him. He would have wanted his crew to make it home. Wells turned. It was Lisa Chen, Thomas's widow. She looked worn down, the past 6 months of grief carved into the lines around her eyes, but her gaze was unwavering. "Mrs. Chen," Wells said, caught off guard. "I never expected to find you here." "I come by sometimes," Lisa said, her voice soft. "To talk to him. Tell him about the girls. Let him know all the good he accomplished." She stepped closer, placing her own hand next to his, flat against the cool engraving of Thomas's name. "For the longest time, I was just so angry with you," she confessed. furious that you used his death to ignite a war, angry that you turned my husband into a symbol. I understand, Wells said quietly. I would have been angry too. But I'm not anymore, Lisa went on, looking him straight in the eye. Because I finally realized something. Thomas died trying to save people, and you took his memory and used it to save so many more. Not just humans, everyone. That is exactly what he would have wanted. Wells felt a profound weight dissolve from his soul, a guilt he'd shouldered for 6 long months, always wondering if he'd dishonored a hero's sacrifice. Thank you, was all he could manage. Lisa looked at him, a genuine curiosity in her eyes. So what will you do, now that it's all over? A faint smile touched Wells' lips. I'm going to teach, he said. At the new Galactic Defense Academy, a unified military force was in training. Ships and soldiers from 100 different species drilled side by side, learning to protect the galaxy together. That sounds just like something Thomas would do, Lisa said, a sad smile on her face. He always believed in bringing people together for a greater good. And you? Wells asked her gently. What comes next for you? Lisa paused, her eyes on the star-filled sky above. I'm going back to school, she said, her voice filled with new resolve. I'm going to study xenodiplomacy. The girls are getting older. They don't need me around every second. I think I can help make sure that what happened to Thomas never happens to anyone else ever again. Wells just nodded. It was the most perfect tribute imaginable. The widow of the man whose death ignited a revolution would now dedicate her life to forging the peace. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, 2 strangers bound by a shared tragedy. Across the galaxy, the ripples of that tragedy continued to spread. The Zelnary homeworld was transforming. The ancient temples and opulent palaces, once symbols of the Council's rigid control, were being repurposed as public museums and universities. The younger Zelnari were spearheading this new age, having seen with their own eyes how the old traditions led only to ruin. Even Elder Silver had resigned, choosing to spend her days teaching history, ensuring the next generation would understand the poison of pride. But on the Kryn homeworld, an even more radical change was underway. The warrior-born culture that had defined the Kryn for millennia was evolving. While strength and courage were still revered, they were now being channeled in a new direction. Commander Geel, the officer who had surrendered Fortress Gamma, had become a leading voice in the new Galactic Defense Force. He argued tirelessly that a true warrior's duty is to shield the weak, not just to conquer the strong. The old guard grumbled at his ideas, but the younger generations were inspired. At the same time, the aquatic species of Deephold were thriving. Elder Deep had leveraged his influence to write sweeping environmental protections into the new Galactic Charter. Now, dozens of species were collaborating to cleanse polluted planets and restore broken ecosystems. Even the Threx Empire, which had tried to exploit the power vacuum when the Council collapsed, was brought into the new alliance, not through war, but through a careful mix of economic sanctions and diplomatic isolation. The galaxy was discovering that working together was a far more powerful force than conquest. Humanity's role in this new galaxy was a careful balancing act. General Wells had kept his promise. The human military was downsizing. Human technology was being shared openly. Humans were not trying to become the new galactic superpower, but they weren't backing down either. They maintained just enough of a military to protect their interests and to contribute to the peacekeeping forces of the new Galactic Assembly. They were partners, not masters. A year after that first historic session, it was time to elect an assembly speaker. Maria Santos graciously declined all nominations, believing her part in building this new government was done. It was time for someone else to lead. The election saw 12 candidates from 8 different species. The campaigns were passionate and sometimes heated. Different cultures had vastly different ideas on governance, but every single dispute was settled with debate and votes, not with threats and warships. The winner was a Zelnari diplomat named Vanna, who at only 200 years old was considered quite young by her people's standards. But she had a vision for the galaxy's future that connected with billions. "We must never forget," Vina said in her inaugural address, her voice ringing through the vast chamber, That this assembly was born from failure. It was born because the old council valued its rules more than it valued life. Because we forgot that the purpose of any government is to serve its people, not to control them. That is a lesson we can never afford to forget. She paused, her brilliant natural colors softening to a respectful, somber silver. And we must never forget Thomas Chen, Vina declared. A human who died because he chose compassion over orders. His death was a terrible injustice, but his legacy is this assembly. His legacy is a galaxy where that kind of injustice will be fought by all of us together. The chamber was silent for a full second. Then, from the human delegation, one person started to clap. Then more joined in. Within moments, the entire hall erupted in a chorus of applause, clicks, chimes, and 100 other signs of respect from every corner of the known galaxy. In a quiet home in California, Lisa Chen watched the broadcast with her 2 daughters. Jennifer, now 16, was already drafting her application for the Galactic Defense Academy. Sarah, at 13, had become obsessed with xenobiology. "Dad would have loved this," Jennifer whispered. "He really would have," Lisa agreed, her heart a tangled knot of pride and sorrow. He always knew the galaxy could be a better place. He just didn't get to see it, she added quietly. "But we did," Sarah said, her voice filled with a maturity far beyond her years. "We get to see it because of him." Lisa wrapped her arms around her daughters, holding them tight. The 3 of them watched as the galaxy her husband had died to save continued to change, to improve, to heal. And on Concordia Prime, in a quiet garden built where the station had been breached, another memorial stood. It was a simple stone, etched with a long list of names. Thomas Chen's name was first. Beneath it were the names of every single soul lost in the war that followed. Human, Zelnari, Kryn, Deepold, and countless others. At the very bottom, a single phrase was carved in over 100 different languages. "They gave their lives so the galaxy could have a second chance. Let's make sure we're worthy of what they paid for." Maria Santos found herself at the memorial often, but this time she had company. General Wells was in town for a conference. Elder Whisper shimmered into existence nearby, a being of pure light and energy, while Admiral Chen stood a short distance away, lost in his own thoughts. "Do you think we actually pulled it off?" Wells asked, his voice barely a whisper. "After all that bloodshed, did we build something that was worth it?" Maria ran her fingers over the names carved into the cold stone. "Ask me again in 100 years," she said softly. "For now, all we've done is lay a foundation. It's what we build on top of it that will decide if it lasts." "Fair point," Wells agreed. Elder Whisper's voice sounded like wind chimes in a soft breeze. "I see something," she offered. "It is not a certainty, just a hope. I see a galaxy 1,000 years from now, where different peoples truly work together, a place where new civilizations are guided, not conquered, where disagreements are solved with debate, not destruction." "Is a galaxy like that even possible?" Admiral Chen murmured. "It is if we make it possible," Maria stated, her tone firm. "That's the entire point. The galaxy isn't something that just happens to us. We have the power to shape it for the better." A faint smile appeared on her face. Thomas Chen knew that. He was faced with an impossible choice, and he found a third option. He broke their most sacred rule to save lives, because he understood that rules are supposed to protect people, not the other way around. "And the council executed him for it," she added. "By doing that, they only proved how right he was." Wells gave a slow, deliberate nod. "The old galaxy was fundamentally broken," he said. "So we had to smash it to pieces. Sometimes you have to tear everything down to the studs before you can rebuild it properly." "And that's what we're doing now," Admiral Chen chimed in. "It's not perfect, and it's not fast, but we're trying." The 4 of them stood in a comfortable silence, a truly strange alliance, a human diplomat, a general, an admiral, and a creature from a species older than stars. But they were all united by one driving goal: to build a better galaxy. Meanwhile, Back on Earth, inside the main hall of the United Earth Government, a new tradition was taking hold. Every single session now started with a moment of silence for Thomas Chen. It was a quiet, powerful reminder of why they fought, why they were rebuilding, and why they could never give up. On every human ship, in every orbital station, and in every colony across the stars, a photo of Thomas Chen was hung in a place of honor. He wasn't depicted as a warrior or some grand hero, but as an engineer, a father, and a husband. A good man who made an impossible decision and paid the highest price. His death didn't just start a revolution, it started a conversation. It forced the entire galaxy to ask itself what justice, fairness, and civilization really meant. And that conversation was far from over. It would echo for generations to come. There would be setbacks, there would be arguments. Some species would resist the new way. Some would try to pull everyone back into the old darkness. But the foundation was strong. The Galactic Assembly was a reality. Its charter was the law. And for the first time, different species were learning how to truly cooperate instead of just putting up with each other. It wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was better. And for the moment, better was more than enough. 10 years to the day after Thomas Chen was executed, a ceremony was held on Concordia Prime. Representatives from every single member of the Galactic Assembly were there. They stood together in the memorial garden as Vina, still the assembly speaker, stepped up to speak. 10 years ago, she began, the old council made a fatal error. They cared more about their rules than about doing what was right. They cared more about their pride than about life itself. They killed a good man simply to prove a point. She paused, letting her words sink in. But his death wasn't the end of his story. It was the beginning of ours. By dying, Thomas Chen held up a mirror to the galaxy, and we were horrified by what we saw looking back. Vina gazed out at the incredible diversity in the crowd. "We are not perfect," she admitted. "We still get things wrong. We still argue, but we are better than we were. We are more just, more fair, and we are finally willing to actually listen to each other." She gestured to the memorial behind her. Thomas Chen saved 47 souls by breaking a bad law. We honor his memory not by blindly following rules, but by making sure our laws are worth following. We honor him by making sure that justice and law finally mean the same thing. The ceremony lasted for hours. Speakers from different species shared their stories of the revolution. They talked about how things had changed for the better and what work was still left to do. At the very end, everyone stood together for a shared moment of silence. They honored the man who died to save his crew. They honored everyone who fell in the war that came after. And they honored the delicate, precious hope that none of it had been in vain. Back on Earth, in a sun-drenched California backyard, Lisa Chen and her daughters watched the ceremony on a small portable screen. As the galaxy fell silent, they bowed their heads. "I'm just so proud of him," Lisa whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Not because he's a hero who changed the universe, but because he was a good man who never forgot who he was. He saw people in trouble and he just couldn't look the other way. He had to do something," she went on. "That was your dad. That was the man I fell in love with." "We're proud of him too, Mom," said Jennifer, who is now a cadet at the Defense Academy, hoping to earn a spot on one of the new starships where humans and aliens would serve as equals. "I'm writing a paper about him for my xenobiology class," Sarah added, "about how his choice highlights a universal truth, that every species, no matter how different, cherishes life. We all share that instinct to protect each other. It connects us all." A sad smile touched Lisa's lips. He would have loved that so much. He always said that if you look past all the weird customs and different appearances, we're all pretty much the same. He really believed we could all get along if we just tried. The broadcast ended and the screen went dark, but the three of them sat there for a long time, wrapped in their memories of the husband and father they missed every single day. It had been 10 years since he was ripped from their lives, but the change he started would ripple across eternity. An entire galactic government had been torn down, and from its ashes, something new and better was beginning to grow, a future that was worth the terrible price that was paid. For ages to come, as stars were born and died and empires rose and fell, the new galactic assembly would continue its work, building, learning, and always facing the great unknown together. And through all of it, nobody ever forgot. They never forgot Thomas Chen. They never forgot the day the old council made a spectacle of executing a lone human engineer. They never forgot the day the galaxy erupted in flames, and they held on to the lesson that was forged in fire and loss, that justice is never a gift given to you by the powerful. It's something people have to build together, for one another. It requires constant effort, endless vigilance, and the courage to do what's right, especially when it's the hardest thing in the world. Thomas Chen knew that. He lived by it, and he died by it. And now, 10 billion souls on 1,000 different worlds were trying their best to live up to his example. The galaxy was a long way from perfect. It always would be. But for the very first time, it was honestly trying to be good. And in the end, that's all anyone can do. To try, to hope, to build, and to never, ever forget the true cost of freedom. The memorial garden on Concordia Prime was quiet under the light of its twin suns. The names on the wall were a silent, eternal testament to the price of peace, a promise to all the generations yet to come. And all around the base of the memorial, new flowers were blooming. They had been planted by envoys from dozens of worlds. Each flower was different, each one beautiful in its own way, but they were all growing in the same garden, reaching for the same light. It was a small thing, just a symbol. But symbols matter. They were living proof that even after the darkest night, after unthinkable loss, after everything you know has been burned to the ground, life returns. Beauty finds a way to grow again. Hope can be reborn. The galaxy had learned its lesson in the hardest way imaginable, but it did learn. And Thomas Chen, a man who only wanted to save his friends and get home to his family, became the teacher. He taught them not with his life, but with his death. Not with powerful speeches, but with one simple, selfless choice. Not by seeking greatness, but by simply doing what he knew was right. The galaxy would always remember. And because it remembered, it would always strive to be better. That was more than he ever could have asked for, and it was everything.